So welcome, and please introduce yourself in the Q&A section and feel free to ask questions. So today we're going to talk about stories, how to create stories in Scratch, and we're going to be covering two main topics. So we're going to go deep into events and parallelism from what we learned yesterday. Then we're going to do some experimenting and iterations using the blocks. And then we'll go more into testing and how to debug our programs or our codes while working in Scratch. And then lastly, we're going to have a discussion on collaborative narratives because this is about stories. So this is stories, section A. So we'll have another session on stories. So before we continue with stories, I would love to do a recap of the first two sessions that we've had so far. So on the first day, we did some exploring of Scratch to get to understand what Scratch is and what you can be able to do with. Then yesterday, we looked into animations and we were able to learn about events. And we said events are used to trigger action or communication or event to trigger action in Scratch. And then parallelism, we say that's whereby you're having more than one activity taking place at the same time. And we said parallelism is made possible using the events blocks. And we looked at a few examples of how to use events and how to use parallelism. And today we're going to go deeper into that, but in relation to stories. So welcome, and please ask questions as we move on based on your projects or what you're thinking. So I'll go straight into stories. When you're creating stories, we have different things that you have to think about. So the first thing we have to think about are our characters. Is your story having characters? You need to ensure that if you're coming up with a story or you're trying to create a story using Scratch, you think about your characters and make sure that your characters relate to what you're trying to tell us. If you're talking about animals, use animals so that we understand you're talking about animals. You cannot use human being sprites when you're talking about animals. So you need to make sure your characters match with your story or the context of the story that you're talking about. The other thing you need to know about your characters is make sure your characters are interactive. Yesterday we looked at using costumes and we said costumes help you to make your sprites seem to be live or act like lively. So using costumes is gonna help you make your characters interactive, hence make your story interesting for people to be able to follow it or for your message to come out, the message you're trying to convey when you're using that story that you're creating. So apart from characters, when we're coding stories in Scratch, there are two things that we look into when you're making the conversation, because story is about conversing, making conversations. So in Scratch, there are two ways you can make conversations. So one of them is by using the broadcast message or using messages to communicate. The other one, we can use events and then motion blocks, events and looks blocks, the blue ones, and also a control known as wait, as you can see here. So I have the event of an example of an event that when the green flag is clicked, and then I have the looks. So I have the event of when a flag is clicked, then I have the looks blocks, and I have the controls of the wait. So you can use the wait to create your conversations, or you can use the broadcasting method when creating your conversation. So I want us to look at when you can use wait and when you can use the broadcast. So I'm going to show an example, then I'll switch us to the Scratch platform so that you're able to understand what I'm talking about. So normally when people are having a conversation, one person talks, then the other person is listening, and then that person who is listening gets a chance to be able to respond or also to get their chance to speak out their minds. So there's that switching between one character to the other character when making a conversation. And that is made possible by the delay or the wait. So I talk, then I keep quiet, that is the waiting. And then I give my friend or the person I'm talking to the chance also to talk as I also wait and listen to what this person is saying. So that is made possible in Scratch coding using the control known as wait, so that it gives you a time to wait and listen to what one character is saying. So we talk using the looks blocks. They enable you to write or make your speech when you're coding using Scratch. So I'm going to give an example. So I'll switch us to the Scratch environment so that you're able to understand what I'm saying. So let me take us to Scratch. Yes, here we are. Yes, so we're in Scratch. So this is what I'm trying to say. So when we have a sprite here, for example, let me add a sprite on my stage. So I'll pick an animal. Or let me pick human beings. So I can pick Avi, and then I pick another character to be able to talk to Avi. So we have two characters, as you can see, and we want to create a conversation using the blocks that we've been talking about, the wait block, to have a conversation. So first thing I'm going to do is make sure that Abby is facing Avi so that they can have a conversation, because we know normally people don't talk when they're showing each other the backside. So these two are now looking at each other. So this is what I was talking about. We have the looks blocks, which are blue in color. And as you can see from my screen, they allow you to make words. Say hello for 2 seconds. Say hello. You can be able to think. You can be able to also think without any timing. So the looks blocks allows you to say your words in Scratch. And then we also mentioned of an event. We say the events trigger the action. So in our case, we want the event to trigger the communication between Abby and Avi. So I'll use this event of when the flag is clicked, because that will be appropriate for now. So I want when I trigger my communication using the flag, these two are able to talk to each other. So this is what I was saying. You can use the event, the looks, as you can see here. And also, lastly, you add the wait. The wait block, which is found under the control category. As you can see, I've picked the wait from the control category under the blocks. So the wait allows you to pause and listen to your friend as they talk. So I'm gonna tell my friend to say hello and then wait for the other. And then, sorry, my code, I just deleted my code. So I was saying hello, and then I said, I wait for 1 second. So why am I waiting? I'm waiting because I want the other person to say hello back. And I used the say hello for 2 seconds instead of using the block, just say hello. This is because if I say hello, I will say hello forever. It will not disappear until I tell it to disappear. But if I say hello for 2 seconds, Abby is only going to say hello to the friends. And after 2 seconds, the hello will disappear and gives Abby another chance to say another word or say something else to the friend. So that's why I used say hello for 2 seconds. Then now I go back to the other sprite, which is Avi. I also do the same. I make a trigger. I tell it when a flag is clicked, they wait for 1 second. Why are they waiting? They're waiting for the friend to talk. And we say the friend is going to say hello for 2 seconds. So I'm going to wait for 2 seconds so that I'm able to reply and say hello to maybe. Hello. Hello, Abby. Yes. So like that. So we can try click the flag and see what happens. So Abby is going to say hello. Then Abby is going to wait for 2 seconds so that they can be able to reply to Abby. So one thing I wanted you to notice is when you're using the wait, you have to calculate for how long will Abby be talking. In our case, she's going to talk for 2 seconds. And that's why we said Abby to wait for 2 seconds before starting to talk so that they don't interrupt each other. We know normally when you're having conversation, it is not well for 2 people to talk at the same time. You'll not be able to listen to each other and you'll not be able to understand each other. So one has to talk first while you're waiting, and then so that you can also get a chance to also talk back. So that's how we use the wait when we are making conversations. So the other one that we are going to look at is how to use broadcast when making conversations. So I have an example here of 2 conversations using broadcast. So broadcast is different from when you're using the event, the looks, and the wait command. So in the first case, we looked at using wait to be able to create a communication. Now we are going to look at using broadcast to be able to create communication. Now in broadcast, you have blocks that allow you to create an event using the broadcast. So this time we will not use when the flag is clicked, but we will say when you receive that message. When you receive that message, that's when you know it is your turn to talk. So in this time, we're going to use a different event, different controls to be able to do communications. Now we're not going to use the wait anymore. We are going to use others. So I'm going to show you an example using Scratch. So let me switch back to Scratch. Here's my Scratch screen. And then, yeah. So let us use now the broadcast to be able to create a communication using broadcast. So in this case, I said we must start with an event. So this time we are going to use these 3, as you can see in my screen. So I don't want to put them together, so I'm going to separate them. They're still sticking to each other. Okay, so in this time, when you're using broadcast, you use the event when I receive a message. So what is this message that we are talking about? This broadcast message is an alert message that is supposed to tell you, my friend has finished talking, now it's my turn to talk. So this time we will not use the calculation for wait. We are going to use to receive that message that Abby has finished talking. It is time for, let us use our common names. It is time for Mary to talk. So we have Mary, and the other one is, we call her Grace. Yes, those are common names in Kenya. Okay, so we have Mary and Grace. So we want Mary and Grace to have a conversation, but this time we're going to use the broadcast means. So first I'm going to Grace. She's the one who is starting the conversation. So I tell her, when I click the flag to start the conversation, Grace says, hello to, hello, what is the name of the friend? Hello, Mary. So once she says hello, Mary, we're going to call this message 1. So we go back to events. Yes. And then we call it message. So we go to broadcast. You can create your new message. So we call our message hello. And we save it. We say, okay. So now the message hello, Mary is what we've called a broadcast hello. So for Mary to be able to talk, Mary must receive the broadcast. So when I receive our broadcast, which we call it hello, when I receive hello, now it's my turn for me to speak back and say, hello, Grace. And maybe ask Grace, how are you doing? How are you? Like that. So we can play that and see what happens. So this time we are using broadcasts. So when I click a flag, so we are able to do the same, have a conversation, but this time we are using the broadcast. So the first person to talk is the person who creates the broadcast. And then the second person who is waiting for the rest to be able to respond is the person who receives that specific broadcast, and then they know it is their time to make the conversation. So if I want to continue this conversation, I'm also going to create another broadcast. So I create another broadcast. So I talk, then I say, I add another. So I've asked Grace, how are you? So Grace is supposed to respond. So let's go to Grace side. So we tell Grace, we go to events. So we tell her when she receives another broadcast from Abby, which was, so Abby said, hello, Grace, how are you? So we need to give this a name. So we call it broadcast, then we give it a name. So we say, how are you? And say, okay. So we're going to Grace and tell Grace, when you receive, how are you? It's your time now to be able to respond and continue with the conversation. Maybe you say, you're fine or you're doing well. I'm doing well. So that is the difference. So we have two ways of making conversation. You can use wait, and then you can use broadcast. But now, both are ways of communicating, but both have instances where they are best when in use. So we can talk about that in why it's best to use, when best to use wait, and when it is best for you to be able to use broadcast. So when using wait, it is best when you're having short conversation or very little message to send, because there's a lot of calculation. You have to calculate for how long will this person be talking so that the other character can be able to know for how long they're going to wait before they talk. So there's a lot of mathematics. There's a lot of calculation in how long will you talk, how long will you wait, then the other person has to wait again. So because of that calculation, it is not effective, or it is not best to use wait when you have long conversation or a full narration or a full dialogue to make. So that's when we use broadcast. So broadcast serves you best when you're dealing with long conversations, when you're dealing with narratives, when you're dealing with documentary, when you have a whole story to tell. You don't have that time or that luxury, or you'll not feel comfortable having to calculate all the delay time for how long you're gonna talk. So the best to use at that time is broadcast. So we use wait when you have short conversations or short dialogues where you're not talking for long, maybe where you're using less than 10 blocks for communicating. And then we use broadcast when you have long conversations or you want to create a whole story or a dialogue, so that you're able to communicate comfortably by just sending, broadcast a message, receive a message, and be able to know it's your time for you to talk. That shifting from one person, or when you have more than one character talking. Imagine in scenario where you have 5 people having a conversation. You cannot be able to do all that calculation. You'll strain a lot and maybe spend more time. So broadcast is best used in such instances. Another way. So that's it about making conversations in Scratch using the blocks. So you can practice more on that or ask any questions where you need more clarification. So the next thing we're gonna look at when creating stories is the scene. What kind of a scene are you working on? So as we were talking about thinking about your problem or problem identification, once you've identified the kind of a story you want to create or the narrative you want to make, first, we said you work on your characters. You need to know who is going to be part of your story and how to bring them to scratch. If you need to take those photos, as we discussed yesterday, if you need to draw those sprites, do that and bring them, upload them in your Scratch and save your work. Create the different costumes. Now, once you've done that, you need to choose your scene. Where are these characters going to perform on? Is it a dancing stage? Is it a school scene? Is it a garden environment? Is it a festival? Is it a wedding? Is it a party? Is it a classroom? You need to know your scene and be able to also do the same. Either choose the backdrops from when you talk about scenes, we are talking about the stage, hence the backdrop. So choose the backdrops, either from Scratch, what you have in the Scratch platform, or you can upload your own backdrop. The same way you upload the sprites, you can be able to take photos of your environment and upload them, or draw your own environment and then upload it as a backdrop, not as a sprite. So in the backdrop space, let me share that on my Scratch platform. So in the backdrop space, that's where you upload it, not in the sprite. So be very careful when you're uploading. You need to know which area you're dealing with. Are you working on the sprite, or are you working on the backdrop? So as I was saying, if you look at this section, we have two. We have the sprite and the backdrop. So when you're uploading, you upload from the backdrop, as you can see. On this, upload your backdrop. If you upload it on the sprite, it will come as a sprite. So make sure you upload it on the backdrop area so that you're able to work on your backdrop. So then, still working on the scene, you need to be able to switch your scene based on the event. If people are working in a classroom and then your story says they moved from the class, then they went to the dining hall, we need to see that change from the classroom environment to the dining hall environment. If they're going to the hostels to sleep, we need to see the hostels environment. If they're going in the field to play, we need to see that. So you have to switch your scenes or your backdrop, and this is made possible by using these blocks. So in the events again, we have the event of when the backdrop is switched, and then we also have under looks, switching backdrops. And then we also have another looks that works with another backdrop. So you can use an event when the backdrop switches. Maybe your character moved from class to field, or they moved from the dining hall to the field. And then to be able to switch your backdrop, you use the looks to switch the backdrops. And then you can also use the next backdrop to be able to switch between all the backdrops that you've aligned in the costumes area. So for example, I can show an example. I can pick a background of maybe a stage. Let us look at the costumes of this backdrop. So this one has only one. It does not have costumes. Let me look for another one. Then I can add another one. So maybe the field, yes. So when I come to my backdrop section, as you can see here, I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So my first backdrop is just a plain backdrop. The second one is a stage, a performing stage. The other one is a bedroom. And then the other one is a field where you can play basketball. So when you have different backdrops aligned in this area where we're calling it backdrops, and the sprites we call it costumes. So when you come to your code, you can easily be able to say you switch the backdrop. So maybe when the flag is clicked, you use the looks, you tell it to put the next backdrop. So we can practice that. So when I click the flag, the backdrop is gonna change. When I click, it keeps changing and putting the next, the next, the next. So the way you're able to manipulate your sprites, it is also very possible for you to manipulate your backdrops and change them. You can put the next backdrop. You can switch your backdrop to a specific one. So for example, you can say when the flag is clicked, you switch to the backdrop of basketball. That is very specific. So when I click the flag, it's gonna go to specifically the basketball backdrop. You can tell it to switch to backdrop and then wait there for another command, or you can just tell it to use the next backdrop as we have seen. And also you can use when a backdrop is switched. So you can say maybe when the backdrop is switched, the sprite, the cat should hide. That should be under looks in sprites. So I go back to my cat and I tell it when the backdrop is switched, please hide. So I tell it when the backdrop switches to basketball, you hide. Then I tell it again when it switches to bedroom, you show. So I can tell it to hide and when to show up. So that's how you create stories. You need your characters to disappear. Sometimes you need them to appear into different scenes. So I want when the flag is clicked, it changes to basket, then it disappears. And then I want when I click the stage, it switches to the next backdrop. Okay, so we can check that. So when I click that, the cat hides. And then when I click the stage, it changes. And when it changes to bedroom, then the cat shows up. So that's how you manipulate your scenes to be able to change the scene based on the different environments you're working on in your story, in relation to your story. So always make sure your characters, your scene are matching, and then you're able to create conversation using the weight and the broadcast methods as we've discussed earlier. Then always remember, since we've been talking about Scratch from the first day, as long as you're coding using blocks or coding in Scratch, it is very possible for you to encounter bugs. And we said these are errors that come up when people are coding. And they're normal and they can be corrected. So you just need to identify what is the problem, what was the problem in your code, why is it behaving the way you did not want it to behave. Then you need to know how you identify the problem. That should be guided to you based on your design or what you want to achieve. And then lastly, you need to fix the problem. We said there are many ways you can find out what is wrong. Maybe the sequence, how you've arranged the blocks is the problem. You just work on it. If you're stuck, we said ask your friend or ask questions. Ask your club members. Ask people around you. And then lastly, we said it is good habit to add comments in your codes so that you can be able to remember what is this code supposed to do. What do you expect it to achieve? What do you expect that block to do for you? So that's it about debugging. So debugging will be very common as long as you're coding. Always expect once you get errors, don't get disappointed. Face them and solve them. Then lastly, we're going to talk about remixing and its benefits. So sometimes you have an idea. When you have an idea, it is always good to research and find out what have other people done about the same problem that you're trying to solve. If people have already created solutions, look at what the solutions that they have created, and then modify those solutions based on your needs, on your problem, to fit your society or to solve the problem that you wanted to solve it. Localize it. You can have a problem you wanted to solve, then maybe it has been solved using a mobile app, and maybe you feel not everybody is able to download the app, and you feel you can create a better version of it by maybe creating a game. So the difference is what matters in being able to solve the same problem. So look at what other people have done, then take what they have done and be able to rework on it so that it fits your situation or is able to solve your local problem. So with me here, I'm with the colleague Beldin, and we are ready to answer any questions that are coming up. So please ask any questions and maybe she can add something.
Hello, I can see a question from Anonymous. You didn't introduce yourself, but it's okay. Can it talk in other languages like Sheng, Kiswahili, English? Yeah, you can use any other language that you intend to use. And in Scratch, when you want to use a language that is not English, you can record your language and then you upload it. So you go to sounds. And then from sounds, you can add them. So to add a new sound, we have other blocks that are not listed here. We will discuss that in our next session. So we will discuss how to add other blocks and how to incorporate a recording and add your own voice to your project, and then come up with a project that you feel is localized enough and is relevant to what you're talking about. Otherwise, the rest are saying hi, welcome all of you. And also, there are various languages that we have listed there, but for Kenyans, we only understand English. Other languages feel very weird. So we can just select our Scratch to run in English, but we have the Swahili aspect. So if you want to incorporate Swahili, we have Scratch now in Swahili. Everything is translated to Swahili, so you can decide to use the Swahili aspect if that one is okay with you. Hi, Charles. We can see you're in. If you have any question with your team, you can share with us. There is Richmond. Welcome, Richmond. Can I command my characters to make some movement while conversing? Yes, you can. You can make your characters make some movement. That is what Sylvia's talked about. That is parallelism. You can decide that they may be walking somewhere at the same time they're conversing. So you can have like two events that move in a particular manner that they relate and they are not confused. So you can have your characters moving while conversing. If you're answered, you can let us know. If you need more clarification or a demonstration on that, kindly let us know too. Charles, I can see Mr. Kisilu. Okay, welcome Mr. Kisilu, SBC Ngami Secondary Taita Taveta. Very good exposure, thank you. We are from Rungiru, thank you so much. Christine, thank you. So kindly just share with us your questions or any clarification that you need in your projects, the projects that you've been doing so far, where you've met some challenges, you can share with us so that we assist you. You come up with the projects that you want. Troy. What can Scratch do? Scratch can do several things. So maybe you be more specific and tell us what exactly you are trying to do in Scratch and then it failed. But Scratch can do several amazing things. If you want to create a game, it can create a full game. If you want to create a conversation, it's going to create that conversation. If you want to create animation, stories, even documentaries, Scratch can do that. So maybe you be more specific on what exactly you mean by what can Scratch do. Continue sharing your feedback, your questions, and more support if you need. We are here to assist you. So there's a project that is shared. You can look at it. Yeah, that is basically a conversation. There's a teddy bear on the bed, and then there's a character. You can think of various projects. Like today we were talking about stories. So just think of a unique way to bring your story aspect and let it be relevant to the projects that we need, and then let it be a localized content. When we talk about localization, let it be something that is relevant to our students and something that is relevant to our community. Oh, more questions. Thank you. This is Paul from Rungiri Secondary. Welcome, Paul. How is this coding helping in life? Thank you so much, Saningo. Coding is relevant in life or in this aspect because the world is moving in the technology aspect. Very soon, if you're not digitally literate, there is nowhere you're going to go. So coding is very relevant now because every profession needs a technology knowledge. Even a comedian needs to know how to market. And how is this comedian going to market? Via website, and a website has to be coded, or via YouTube channel, and that needs someone in the technology field. Nowadays, when you look at the careers that we are looking at in this aspect, coding stands at the top 2, not even top 2, it's at the top of the relevant careers that we have in this generation. Very soon, most of the young people will be moving in that career path, where we have them developing softwares that can solve real world problems, because most careers are being replaced by the technology. Robots are taking over various jobs like waiters. Nowadays, we have robots bringing food to various restaurants. We have automated vehicles. So coding is very relevant in this life. So you'll tell us whether your question is handled or not and share with us your feedback. Let's continue receiving more questions. Rungiri, we can see you're in. You've been typing 1-1. I can see IC. So feel free to share your feedback and the challenges you're facing in terms of stories. We have various themes in Scratch, and we've outlined some of them. So just share what you think can work for you. Yeah.
So I'm going to add something on what Beldin was talking about, how relevant coding is. So one other way I can say coding is relevant. If you're able to code and come up with your own program, if today you created an animation and that animation starts being viewed in either televisions or YouTube channels, you're going to make business out of it. So apart from just learning, you can learn what how to code and then be able to create your own content and sell it. Create your own game and be able to sell it out there. Let your game be what children are playing or people are playing in their phones. Through that, you're able to make business out of this coding knowledge. Another thing, for you to, with technology taking over with the world right now, the automatic vehicles, the robots everywhere, ATM machines which you need to be able to communicate with. We need people who can be able to create these things, and we need people who can be able to repair them if they have issues. So apart from the engineers who are doing the hardwares and all that, we also need developers or people who are coding, who understand the codes to be able to work on these machines when they have issues. So it can be a career, and it can also give you a business value out of it. So look at it, how you can use it outside your learning environment. Just apart from learning it in the club, use that knowledge when you come out. You can choose a computer science career out of it and end up being that engineer who understands the codes, or use it to create the business aspects. Just look at how you can be able to use it outside the club context, and also push on your projects. You never know, your project could be the next Facebook or the next YouTube, what everybody is using. So look at coding with all that in mind. So you can see I've displayed a few themes. Oh, let me talk about the themes, then we go back to the questions. I'll be very brief. So for this session today, I'm going to share 4 types of story themes. So we have different types of stories. You can decide to work on a story that is in a dialogue form. That is where characters or sprites are talking to each other. They're making dialogues. You can be able to create stories in terms of settings, creating different settings. For example, you might decide to work on the different weather sessions, the different seasons that we have, the winter, the spring, the rainy seasons, all that. Create animations on that so that, for example, in Kenya, we don't experience winter. We can use that to teach kids who don't know what winter is or what snow is. They can use your story to be able to learn more about winter and what happens during winter or what happens during summer, spring, all those. So you can use setting to be able to bring out your story. Another thing, you can use check it out. So when we say check it out themes, in this theme, we have a character maybe moving to different scenes and telling us more about those themes. So these ones can be used to do projects like environments, how to take care of environments, maybe the science, the different areas in science, maybe the parts of the body, all those. So come up with a story. Try think how you want to bring it out. So stories is not only about dialogues. It can be talking about a specific setting, like the example I've given of the different seasons that we have. It can be about the different climatic conditions that we have, or the different types of forests that we have. You show us the different settings. Then the story can also be about, check it out. You're taking us to a different scene where we are learning about the digestive system. Another scene where we are learning about bones. Another system setting where we are learning about different parts of body. Think of those subjects that you study and how can you bring them out as stories. Then when you talk about premise, we're talking about how you interact in your story. Is it about a character talking to a character? Is it about a character dealing with the society? Is it about the character talking about themselves? Or is it about the character and nature? So it is not only about dialogues, it is more than dialogues when we're bringing out stories. So we can go back to the questions. Belden, please.
The next question that we have is, can Scratch come up with the software? Scratch can come up with the various things like interactive stories, games, animations, and that is ideally what we are looking for. If you want it to come up with a complex application, that will introduce us to more complex programming languages like Java, Python, which will come up with the applications that we need more features to do with that. So if it's answered, kindly let us know. If it's not answered well, you can also chat us back. Can someone come up with a software that's the same question? And then we have Juma, can the character open his or her mouth while talking? Yes, that is called now the costumes. In Scratch, we don't have videos, we have pictures or images. So the images are the ones that we make them change their costumes at a pace that is in line with our story, so that if you want the character to open his mouth, then we will have a costume of the character in the first position and in the second position, and then you'll find them opening their mouth. Let me just give you a small demo on that. You can see in my screen, I have Abby. When I pick on Abby, and I have Abby and Avery on the screen. So when I go to costumes, I click on Abby, and then I go to costumes. I have Abby. Let me click on Abby, and then I go to her costumes. I have costume A for Abby. B, you can see in costume B, Abby moves. Costume C, Costume C, Abby is laughing, and then costume 4, Abby is standing still. So those are the various costumes that we can change to make our sprite move or talk or do an action that we want it to do. Troy is asking, can you create your own sprite character? Yes, you can. You can create your own sprite character. You can take an image of your own sprite. For example, you want to use the picture of one of the students. You can take a picture and then you upload it to your project. We have, can you make a story do any action? Yes, you can make a story do any action. I think you wanted to ask, can you make a character in your story do any action? These are some of the demonstration of the movements that you can make your character do. And you can make them sing, you can make them dance, you can add music. There are a lot of things that you can do in Scratch. How can you make sprites move during conversation? I think I've answered that by changing the costumes. Like for example, in my screen, you can see that the various codes, I have these sprites and then I have various costumes. When green flag is clicked, my sprite is supposed to move 10 steps, say hello for 2 seconds, and then forever to change the costumes. The reason why I'm putting weight is because when I don't put weight, the costumes will change very fast. So when I click on the green flag, we can see that my sprite says hello, and then the costume changes. They wait every 1 minute. That is the way you can make your sprite move or do any action. Troy, can Scratch change from using animations, characters? I really didn't understand what you meant by that. Maybe you elaborate. Dennis, can you do coding using a smartphone? We have the version where you can install Scratch. If Scratch is what you meant, but you can do other coding also using a smartphone. But if you meant Scratch, yes, you can still use Scratch in your smartphone, in your tablet. Yes, you can. Troy, if someone wants to start an invention, what things does one need to consider? If you want to be innovative, you have to consider the problems that you face in your society, and you have to come up with projects that are going to solve these problems. That is what we call innovation. Innovation is coming up with a solution to a real world problem. So look around. What do people face around? What are some of the challenges that you see in your community, and what are some of the things that you can come up with to help that situation? Dalton, if I learn more about coding, will I be able to make my own project? Yes. When you learn more about coding, you will be able to make your own projects. You will be able to be more innovative. You'll be able to come up with more ideas that will really help solve some of the problems that we face around. Can I download a backdrop to suit my project? Yes, you can download a backdrop. You go to the backdrops and then you upload a backdrop. When you go to backdrop, you can see upload backdrop. You click on upload backdrop, it will redirect you to your PC. From your computer, you'll select the backdrop that you need. So like when I click on it, you see it takes me back to my PC. So I can yeah, so from my PC, I can pick where I have that backdrop if I've already taken a picture and incorporated it in my laptop. Babu, can you draw something and create animation? Yes, you can. You can draw something. Go to costumes. When you go to costumes, you can see we have that. Let me delete my character who is on the stage. And then I have these other pointers. I have the paint. After my character is deleted, I have the pointer, the brush, the rubber. So I can pick one and draw anything I want. You can see I'm not so good at drawing, but I can pick on I can draw something that I want, and then I use it for animation. The next question.
Still on that, when you're drawing your own, you can also draw with other tools and be able to upload it. So if you're training to draw on Scratch, you can always draw with any other tool that you normally use for drawing, then be able to upload that drawing into your computer. It's the way Beldin has explained that you can be able to upload either a backdrop or a sprite. So if you can draw it in Scratch, but if you can draw in other tools, you can draw, then bring it on Scratch and be able to use it. Yes.
Thank you so much for the adding. The next question, can characters talk, produce sound? Yes, they can. We are going to handle that tomorrow, so kindly don't miss. The next one, can I create my own character based on my story? For example, a doctor or any other? Yes, you can. If you want to create a story that talks about medicine, or rather the line of medics, you can upload the character if you don't find the character among the sprites and use it. So feel free to share your questions with us, the challenges that you're facing, or if you feel that your question is not well handled, just chat us back and then we'll be able to give you a demonstration that will help you with your projects.
I can see Chris is asking whether they can be able to access the language behind Scratch. Yes, it's very possible. but you have to create your project in Scratch and then be able to convert it so that you're able to see the actual scripts behind the codes. So, but it is very possible. So you just create your project, then save it. Then now we're able to convert that project. You're able to convert it and be able to see the scripts behind those blocks. And then in Scratch, can you add your own music? Yes. So we're gonna look at adding music and making sounds in stories in the next session, in our next lesson. So please don't miss that. So we're going to handle that in our next lesson. And I think most questions have been answered about the backdrops. Yeah, so we've answered most of the questions. The ones we've not answered, we're gonna cover those topics in our next lesson on Scratch. So please don't miss that session. Be there so that you learn more. And then, yes, so just as we've talked in stories, it's about your characters. So if you want to, the way you're asking about doctors, you need to bring the doctors into picture so that, which is your characters, so that you're able to use them in your story. And then about the scene, it is about those backdrops. If you're talking about the medic world, if you're talking about hospital, you need to go to hospital, get those scenes you want to talk about then upload them or use images from online. But remember, every time you use other people's content, there's always the copyright issues. So please avoid being a victim of copyright issue. Try create your own content. And if it is a must to use someone else's content, either music, either scenes, either images you get online, always recognize those people or seek permission from them so that you don't fall in trouble of copyright. Yeah, so can you take a photograph and make animation? Yes, take those different shots. Take those different shots and be able to upload them either as your backdrop or your sprites, and then you can be able to use them in Scratch. Can I use coding to edit a video? Yes. You can use it very much. It is very possible in different platforms. So we're gonna share with you that and give you a demo on how you can edit videos using coding, but it is possible. So I can see more questions and our time is up. So can I send a real live characters? What do you mean by live, Jackson? So yesterday when we were talking about costumes, we said using the costumes helps you make the characters be live or appear real, like they're walking. That walking is the real thing, is the making it live. So that is only possible using the different costumes or taking the different shots, combining them to get the animation part out. So I don't know what you really mean by live. Let me understand that. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're very happy. We had an interactive session, lots of questions. So anything that we've not been able to answer today, we're gonna have another session on stories and be able to continue with it. Tell you how to make your characters talk instead of just saying hello. They can say hello actually by talking, adding music, all those. We're gonna incorporate them in the stories and tell you more of different story themes as we've discussed today about the dialogues, checking out the different settings and the different premises. So thank you so much. Bye-bye. And you can keep asking questions. You can even direct inboxes when you're working on your projects, whenever you get stuck, so that we can help you be able to solve your problem or debug your codes. Thank you so much. Bye. It was a pleasure having you around.